Welcome to Movie Robots. It's just movies, yay!
Like the rest of America, we watched Hamilton.
Right,
July 3rd,
first day.
It was streaming on Disney Plus. I was under the impression it would only be streaming for that single day. So we definitely watched it that day. Turns out I was wrong about that. You can still watch it on Disney Plus.
Makes more sense.
Well, I thought they really wanted to drive the market, and it's a huge thing, to make this available to the masses. So many people that wouldn't be able to go, and I mean you can't right now go see it.
I think it definitely drove their subscribers up for Disney Plus. Now what's the goal?
So Hamilton is a very popular, very successful Broadway musical about Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah.
One of the signatures on that. I guess.
I would like now. Is there going to be one about John Hancock?
I don't know.
Hancock.
In the musical,
I like
they
my
say
name real big.
They say that there's stories about every other founding father, and I'm like, is there? I don't know. Is there a big story about every other founding father? Because I feel like if founding fathers is that list of signatures on the Declaration of Independence.
So if you're just going to hit that, yeah. I knew who he was before they made the musical. It's nobody never heard of this guy. So I think that he may be everywhere. Already knew about this guy.
I'm just saying, maybe there's more stories out there about other founding fathers, and this can just be a thing. It'll be a Broadway series. But let's get back to Hamilton. Kelsey, let's just go, wait, or skip. What do you tell me?
I mean, you gotta go see this movie. It's such a big part of our society in general. I think that as far as Broadway musical goes, I'm not an expert, but I've seen some of them, and as that goes, very good. The music's great. They bring in a newer cultural outlook into the music making, and that's awesome. The story was good. It was a fun watch, and I say go see it. The beat part, just like you should see. I would say the same thing out. This might make you mad. You should also watch Tiger King. It's a cultural event.
I'm also going to say go. This was a huge Broadway musical, swept the nation. I mean, people before the pandemic, getting tickets to this thing was ridiculous to try and get. I know people who seem like they're kind of celebrities, and they're like, I've never seen Hamilton. I couldn't get tickets.
It's like the Mayweather versus Pacquiao of Broadway musicals.
And I have seen other musicals, like Kelsey. I'm not an expert in this field by any means, but I do enjoy musicals. I have seen musicals, and I've seen a few in person. And oh my gosh, this was really, really well done. The writing, the music, the production, the set, the cast. I mean, from your lead people to your supporting cast, all the way they hit their marks. And the way they had the set, because they had circles moving, you're able to see when you're watching it filmed on via TV, you can see it helps them to move in the set, but then they also have to move and they hit their marks all. I mean, it was I don't even understand.
This was the original cast, so it's the
how you put this together. How did you make all of this so good and get all these people together? Just really, I thought it was really, really well done. Now, I mean, I don't know if there's spoilers.
Spoilers, Hamilton dies. Because it was a long time
if you didn't know that.
He's not still alive.
He's not still alive. But maybe you didn't know, according to the musical, the other founding fathers grow old, but Alexander Hamilton does not. He dies being in a duel, which is, of all the ways to die. I mean, in some aspects, really cool, some aspects kind of dumb. You go either way with that. What else about the musical? I will say this. So you know this about me, because this happens when we watch movies.
This is your thing.
Is that if a movie is based on a true story, I'm going to look it up. And so we were about, other spoiler. This is 3 hours long. So, this is your night. You're going in, this is your night. About a third of the way into it, I had pulled out my phone and I was like, hold up, wait a minute. Is this true?
Well, here's my
basically, if I can just finish my thought, which is not specific to what it is, but my thought, and what I very quickly found is this is a musical not a historical representation of Alexander Hamilton. Those are two very different things. If you want to know the accurate history of Alexander Hamilton, go to a historian. If you want a beautiful, amazing musical, then go to this artist, like this was created, but the two just didn't coincide. There were some misses historically, so this was historically inaccurate.
My pet peeve in watching stuff is like, is this the truth or is this pop propaganda? Is this somebody's spin, taking somebody's story so that they can fit somebody else's story to their narrative by changing it? And so I'm pretty like keen on that, however they do it. If they do it for this set of values or this set of values, whatever, I kind of pick on you can kind of tell this is exactly that, which kind of goes back to your thing. It wasn't historically accurate, but again, most things aren't. If you're watching, there is a spectrum though, and I feel like this goes across the spectrum to where it bothers me a little bit.
Yeah. Say that. Like there's minor things. So an example in the musical is there is at one point Thomas Jefferson and I forget the other guy, but they come to Alexander Hamilton and they're like, guess what? We found some dirt on you. And Alexander like explains or whatever. In reality, it wasn't Thomas Jefferson that came to Alexander Hamilton. It was two other guys who, didn't show up in this musical at all. I get changing that. Like you made it more interesting and you brought in the characters. I get that. When you make somebody an abolitionist when they weren't an abolitionist, well then that kind of like, I'm like, I don't know the reasoning behind it. All I know, and I'll put a link to the Harvard article that I found that kind of went over a little bit of this, but like there's some people, historians out there that are like,
Yeah.
And so what that did for me...
Well, because it was trying to draw the audience in to be like, oh, this guy is, and that's good, but you're taking a true story and twisting it.
Well, and for, like, a lot of people, like, I follow somebody on Instagram, and I think it's totally fine because people are different. I'm the person that's going to go and look this up immediately. She was not, and I heard her say, I guess I wasn't very familiar with the history, and now, like, she thinks she is. And I was like, hold up, you're still not familiar with the history. This musical doesn't count for that. It's not a history.
Oh, it counts, Rachel. It's the history now.
But
I didn't realize that so many of the forefathers were good at rapping.
Okay. What it did for me is because I pulled it up a third of the way through, it was hard for me to be fully invested. So I know some people who saw the musical and they were like, oh, I was in tears. I was just so sad. And it was hard for me to be fully invested because I didn't trust the musical. And if you want like my heart and my emotion, I have to have like some kind of trust. And I felt like I didn't have that.
Yeah, it was really good though. We actually went to abroad and saw a Broadway show when we were in New York last year.
A show on Broadway, like actual Broadway. We've also seen like other shows, like, so I think operas are very similar to musicals, and we've seen other shows in this like genre. So I feel like good, like, I mean, and we saw Les Mis, which is like the, huge, yeah. Oh, I was going to share. My niece, she was so excited to watch this. She had already been listening to the soundtrack,
which is precious,
prior, and then after, because we went and did other things the week my niece and nephew were here, and I got to hear most of the Hamilton soundtrack several times after seeing Hamilton, and I kind of was able to like let down like my guard that I initially had up because I felt like I couldn't trust it. Yeah. And I was able to be like, wow, they really did do a good job of the layers of this man's life and the people like around him. And he brings up emotion now, like in his wife, Eliza, and understanding just the pain and the complexity of like, infidelity in a marriage, the death of a son, the death of a husband, and it was within this backdrop of revolution and starting a new country. Yeah. So it was really, I listening to the soundtrack, I was able to get that even with the historical inaccuracies.
Yeah, and by the end of the musical, that I think is the story of that relationship and the love. It didn't seem like it was a focus of it. Until the end. Yeah. When like we were talking about this when we were watching it, but the universal values found in Les Mis are pretty present throughout. Like you know what the story is, even though you have this backdrop, a similar backdrop.
Right.
So I think that
So if there were universal truths in Hamilton, it was forgiveness, it was compassion, it was love.
Yeah.
And it was hard to see those like early on in the musical.
Really amazing in this musical, the amazing work they did with music. Like it was
really
like
good
really
music.
Really like just sets it apart, I think.
And
especially because it's bringing a whole, it's kind of like Les Mis or Phantom Operas did back then, 20, 30, whatever long years ago, brought in kind of like a newer sounding music to these type of things.
Yeah.
This did the same thing for even a newer sounding music, and I think it's awesome.
Can we also say that I think the mark of a really good musical is being able to bring in other numbers to later like musical numbers. So like they had like Look Around, Helpless, and those were songs, and then later in the musical you hear that note, it gets brought in, or that word gets brought in. And I thought that like is an extra layer of complexity. When you see like, let's say a Disney musical, it's like you have, there's a song, here's a song, here's a song, but there's no like overlap. We both agree our favorite character was Thomas Jefferson.
He was, because he reminded me of Andre 3000 from Outkast.
When he came in,
I was like, yes!
With that swagger and that like walk, like I just couldn't even. But the way he did, the way he, like, I mean, the guy cast for that, like, perfect.
Nailed it.
Just loved it. I really would have liked King George. It kind of like bordered on, I'm not real big into ridiculing people. And so,
see, I am.
Okay. If you taking King George and being like, oh, this is a guy we can throw stones at because he's rich, he's from this monarchy, he's from another country. Let's just make fun of this guy. And it bordered on doing that, and I'm just like, that's not for me. But the guy that did hit, like, that was really, really good too.
You know, we appreciate you coming to spend our time with us here on John Hancock's musical.
This is John Hancock.
That's the next one they're going to do, John Hancock.
You think so?
He's like, a big giant signature. That'll be like the song.
And that'll be the only thing.
That'll be the signature song.
And that'll be the only thing in his whole life was like the signature. So it's like
he'll
really
be obsessed
focused.
with it. Like how Hamilton was obsessed with his legacy.
Yeah.
John Hancock will be obsessed with his signature being biggest.
Yeah,
Must be the biggest signature in the world. Like him practicing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was the other thing about Hamilton was the whole legacy thing. I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I don't think that's a universal, like, value we should all, like, try to
Well, it depends what you mean by, like, I hope that my legacy has to do with love, you know, and, like, timeless things that go into the next world and not things here like a building or, like, I did this big thing that's gonna someday just be gone.
Yeah, yeah. It just, like, I think it's okay to be forgotten. Is that weird? That's a thought I have in my head.
Well,
I haven't really worked that out, but I think it's okay to be forgotten.
You're saying the same thing I am. You just don't know it yet.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys.